What if the topic that we spend the most energy avoiding is actually the topic that can make us more compassionate, more connected, and clearly more alive? In this episode, Mike Oppenheim explores the intersection of death, consciousness, and what it means to be human. A conversation that moves from ancient philosophy to artificial intelligence and from a personal loss to a community healing. This is a delightful conversation, meandering through various topics. It's an honest conversation, and it might quietly change the way you think about the time you have left to live.
That's so important. In this episode, we're going to talk with Mike about thinking about death and how it can actually change your life to be thinking about death and opening up that conversation. And what AI and technology can teach us about death and grief and where they fall short. And also the important ways that community and language shape the way we face mortality. So important to think about. Mike brings a rare combination of intellectual curiosity and genuine warmth to one of the most avoided conversations in modern life. And he makes the complex feel accessible. We had a great time with him, and we get to be on his podcast. He wants to do us one at a time, so you get to see us separately on his podcast a couple of times in the future here. He really is a fun guy to talk to.
It was a wonderful really conversation. Yes.
It really makes the complex feel accessible and the uncomfortable kind of feel human, right? So whether you are working an end of life or you've recently lost someone, or you're simply someone asking these big questions, this episode can give you some real perspective to take with you.
That's right.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to End of Life Conversations. I am the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz, and today we get to talk to Mike Oppenheim. We heard about Mike through, do we remember who was insistent that we meet Mike?
No, some other guest. I can't remember who it was.
It was Nikki, the death doula.
Nikki.
Yes,
of course.
She was she really wanted us to talk to you.
And we got to talk to her. She was awesome.
Yes. So Mike's podcast is called Coffin Talk, in which he asks humans how the meaning of death affects the way they live and how they're moving in the world and their life. He tells us the most successful thing he's ever done, and that has surprised him. This is the most surprising thing he's ever done.
Coffin Talk. Wonderful, wonderful. I am the Reverend Wakil David Matthews. Welcome, everybody. We really enjoyed listening to his podcast and all of the writing he's done. I've been looking at his Substack. He's got some really fun essays that he does and just odds and ends off and on. And we'll post a link to all that in the podcast notes. Besides his podcast, he writes fiction, he does essays, like I said, he writes music and makes videos. He's written 4 books, which you can find all about that information on his on the link that we'll give you. He writes, he edits books, he indexes books, and he runs a writing workshop. So he said in his bio, he shared that he drinks coffee, eats avocados. I can go for both of those. And his favorite part of his life is his family, his wife, Elena, son, Tyler, and his daughters, Alice and Emily. Oh, and we don't want to forget the dog, Penelope Persimmon Parmesan, or more easily remembered as Penny, right?
Yes, that's all correct.
Right. So welcome. It's great to have you,
Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. As you can tell from my resume, I am completely unprepared for the digital modern future. I work with books and I like to hang out with my family.
What a crazy idea.
I'm right there with you, Mike. I'm right there with you. And I appreciate that you're writing your books and not allowing machines to write your books.
Oh. we could talk for the next 2 hours about that if you want.
No. And honestly, let's not, because life is too short and there's other lovely things to interact about. So with that said, could you share with us how you became inspired to do this work?
Yeah, it's a pretty zigzaggy story, but the most succinct version is when I was 18 and I went to college, I met someone who told me you should volunteer. And so he took me up to this high school and I started volunteering with like underprivileged kids. This was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I went to college, but I'm from California. And then I got hooked. I thought volunteering, while not like, it never like looks fun on the calendar that you have to go and volunteer somewhere, but as soon as you're done, it really does uplift you in a unique way that other experiences don't. So I kind of self-acclimated and trained myself to just always give like 3 to 5 hours of my week to volunteer projects, with rare exceptions. And when my first son was born, I took a little time off because I needed to really be with him. Um, but his mother and I got divorced and we split custody, and I suddenly had like a lot more time on my hands. So I started volunteering at a hospice ward. And my grandmother had died not from Alzheimer's, but she had had Alzheimer's for 15 years. And then that had created a situation where she didn't know she had cancer. And so she died like really quickly from cancer. So I was affected by watching my grandmother at a young age deal with Alzheimer's. It was like very scarring, but also something I wanted to help with. So I went to a memory ward and I did specifically hospice with dementia patients, which is like, I don't know, like extreme hospice, I would say. And but what was weird is even patients with like extreme and severe dementia, they would have these moments of lucidity in the dying phases. And the one thing they just overwhelmingly projected to me is I wasn't really prepared for this and I don't know like how to deal with this, or I'm prepared for this, but my family isn't, and I don't know how to help them. Like it was either or both. And I've always had a unique approach to like not. I fear my own death the same way I'm sure you do, and everyone does, with that primal part of your brain that just doesn't want to cease to exist or isn't sure what's going to happen. But I've always been very comfortable around people as they're dying. My mom had friends dying of cancer when I was a kid, not like in abundance, but enough that I would like, for some weird reason, I would ask to go to their house and like hold their hand and just be around them. So I felt like, and I now do feel like I don't have a calling, but one of the unique things I can do in this world is I can bring a sense of calmness to people as they're dying. And right before this experience, one of my close childhood friends had succumbed to liver cancer, and he and I had spent an enormous amount of time as he was dying, and I just kept telling him, you can die whenever you want to. I know your wife and your family is telling you to fight, but like I think that it's up to you. Like I'm gonna miss you either way, but and he really like thanked me for my approach to that. So I took that into hospice, and in hospice you don't get yelled at if you're helping someone die. Like it's a unique situation in America where people are done fighting. Even a judge has said you're done. So I was able to go to this ward and I worked there for 4 years. I actually ended up volunteering more hours than my quota, and I really liked it. And then it ended when COVID hit, because COVID was a disaster for memory wards, as I'm sure you can imagine. In every state, it was just like mayhem. So I was told you can't come. We're closing the ward to volunteers and even some of the CNs and people who work there. And then I had been remarried that year, and so my wife and I just had like this incredible opportunity during COVID. As much as COVID was horrible for many people, it was like an extended honeymoon. We got married 3 weeks before America closed down, with not knowing that COVID was a thing. We planned our wedding, and then 2 weeks before the wedding, some nervous person in New York was like, "Are you worried about COVID?" And I was like, "No," and I hung up. Like just. And then as all the people who came, they said it was the last party before the end of the world. Like it was like a very interesting experience. So during that year, my wife and I started this podcast, Coffin Talk. We decided to like interview people, and our mission statement is to help bring about what you're doing, like a discussion about death and dying in America specifically. So we interview people from all over the world, but my focus is on helping America, the culture that we have, change its, I would say, horrible attitude towards death and dying. Yeah. So that's the story.
That's a great
All right,
story.
it's a great story, but Mike, I'm going to have to ask you for point of clarification, because
Sure.
I'm pedantic this way. When you say the culture of America, do you mean the United States or the Americas? Because America is not just one country. So can you answer that?
I actually don't refer to South America or the Americas as the Americas, because Amerigo Vespucci was a colonial person. So I actually refer to each area differently, and I only call this country the United States of America. Same with Mexico. I try to say Los Estados de Mexico instead of.
But it's Mexico is also the Estados Unidos, so it's also United States.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. So,
and only because I am really driving forth my one of my many missions is languaging, and languaging is very important to me. So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, and actually great. Today I was educated. I'm taking lessons in Spanish. I'm Cuban, and I want to get much better at Spanish. And the person teaching me said that she refers to it as castellano because she doesn't think Spanish is the
Casti
appropriate word. Yeah, do you know
Mm.
what she
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
yeah, and I like love that. I'm in the same. I was a language teacher for
Yeah.
15 years, so I
Yeah.
don't think that's pedantic. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I'm just going to jump in here. I'm sorry, Wakil.
Please go
I'm
for it.
going
Yeah. That's what
to,
we're talking. Yeah.
a part of, I think I love, I'm a poet, I'm an artist, I'm trilingual,
nice.
speaker, and language matters. And I really believe language matters when it comes to death and dying in this country, because
Mm.
we have usurped the notion that death is just a continuum of life and from birth to death. And now death has become relegated to, don't utter it in mixed company because we don't want to call it in, or it's
Mhm.
uncomfortable. So have you found that that is an issue talking to, like, I don't know how you find your folks to be on the podcast, but do you suspect that language is a portion of what we're up against when we want to communicate that death is normal?
Yeah, and I would contextualize it only to say that many guests seek me to come on the show, whether it's because they want to advertise something or something silly like that,
Mm-hmm.
or because they're really interested and invested in the cause. Meanwhile, when I ask people who are close to me, the most common answer for why they won't do it is I'm worried about someone at work finding out. I'm worried that. So yes,
Mhm.
it is definitely a taboo subject, and also people really are reticent to actually talk about how spiritual they are or are not. Like, I mean, it's not just religious people or atheists. It's really just a whole broad spectrum of people who don't want to get into speaking about what they think. And my
Mhm.
job as a host is to calm people down, to say, hey, like, I'm not asking you to defend what you think. It's actually the opposite.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
curious,
I'm
like,
just
what
curious.
ticks.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think
Well,
that's a
and
really good question.
for so one of my practicums for ceremony for seminary was asking people to do their advanced care directed planning.
Yeah.
And, it's just like, this is what I did it for 20 some odd people, couples, and mostly a lot of the US kind of faith traditions, coming from like fundamental Christianity to agnostics or spiritual but not religious. And it was interesting to me to notice that some people were very clearly happy to talk about the plans of right before death, but it was two of my subjects were like, it stresses me to talk about death because I'm afraid I got it wrong, and I don't want to go meet God because if it's real, like, I'm going to hell. So I was just like, wow, we have to like take a step back and talk about your
Right.
faith tradition because it seems really scary.
That's right. Yeah.
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 Yeah, my
Yeah.
younger two children are 4 and 2, and their maternal grandmother just passed away pretty abruptly. Diagnosis
Mhm.
2 months before death. And it's really interesting. Like, I just stay the course. She says, "Is she coming back?" And I say, "Not that we know of. I don't think so. But if you feel her presence, explore that. If you have a
Yeah.
dream, So I just try to
Oh,
keep every door
beautiful.
open, but I also try to
Mhm.
Mhm.
close the door of like hope in some like story that people pass down from like the different regions of the world that over explain something that I don't think we're ready to really know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great to stay in that place and to encourage your
Curiosity.
children. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
children to stay in that place of curiosity and unknowing. I mean, that's really that's what we got, whether, whether or not we
Yeah.
think we know. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, thank you. That's so great. That's so important. And I really appreciate the whole kind of spectrum of understanding that people from all different ways of looking at it. And you said you're speaking to people from outside the U.S. too.
Yeah.
Um, and we found that too, that people from outside the U.S., not only do they have a different way of looking at it, but they also quite often have it seems like, at least in many cases, have a more accepting place of looking at it and more acceptance of the idea. Like we meet people, we have met people and we've talked to people who think that if you talk about death, you're going to die. It's going to make you die somehow. Or if you talk about
Yeah.
hospice, you've given up. And these things come up a lot, and that's what, again, kind of the mission that we're all on here to say none of
Mhm.
those are true, and you
Mhm.
really can have and should, and not should. I hate to should, but you really it really helps if you can have these conversations now, before you need to and before it's a crisis, in order
Mhm.
to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that we're all working with each other. So really appreciate that, and that perspective again. So is it right now? Can you tell us a little bit more about what's been going on with your podcast or with your work in general? How's that going, or what do you see as the future? Or yeah, tell us more in general about how things are going.
Yeah, so I mean, as you kind of alluded to and read with the bio, I've never been content doing just one thing. In my early 20s, I was a restaurant worker and a musician, and then I transitioned into education. I taught for 15 years, and I was a no, 10 years, sorry. And uh, I was an author, and I went and got an MFA, and I also got a simultaneous teaching degree. I was supposed to go to law school, and I was hit by a car, and I had a year to defer. And in that year,
Mhm.
I had my come to whatever moment, and it was like, this is not for me. I'm definitely like going to take the wayward path of the artist, and hopefully I'll marry
Oh,
rich or something like that. And
okay, come on. Language matters, not wayward.
yeah, no, no,
Exciting path.
Ecstatic,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, for me, the sarcastic language matters a lot. But yes, no, I
Uh,
absolutely no. I'm proud to be a member of whatever we call our tribe, and then also I do. I've I never quit my day jobs while I did these things, and it's because I
Hmm.
I like work as well. Like, I was
mhm,
socialized in kind of two
mhm,
directions. So,
mhm,
um, and that's kind of, we joked about AI slop and what they're doing. I'm not afraid of AI taking all our jobs and all that, but I do think we better figure something out how we're going to guide children in the future to like feel a sense of value, a sense of worth. Like contributing to
Hmm.
your tribe, your people, the people around you is very important, I think, for all of us, for self-esteem, for mental health, for
mhm,
so I don't know where we're going with that, but with regards to the podcast, it's one of the very few things in my life that I have tried very hard not to monetize and not to like turn into any sort of entrepreneurial thing. I just want it to be my volunteer project. I spend
It's your PSA. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's my answer to that. And meanwhile, I did hire someone to help me with like YouTube, and he said like, "Oh, what are you doing with SEO optimization?" And I said, "Well, that was a fun sentence. You can explain it to me, or you can just like tell me how much you charge to do that." And so he did that for me, and that helped me a lot. It created a wider net, which in turn gets me more applicants for guests, which is important.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
didn't used to deny anyone, but after a while, I had to start being a little more careful. Like I said, there's
mhm,
some people who are just really salesy and they don't want to actually talk
mhm,
about death and dying. They want to talk about their book. And um, so,
Yeah.
but the podcast is just it enriches me. Like I really feel good. I drag my feet every once in a while going into the interview because I'm busy and I have other things to do. But as soon as it's over, I just
mhm.
feel exactly what we
Always.
talked about
Yep,
earlier.
yep.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, and then my other projects, it's pretty interesting. I started out as a fiction writer, and I got some traction, and I got published twice, and then I turned over to self-publishing because it was actually economically better, which sounds weird to most people, but um, and then I started hitting my stride with nonfiction. Actually, I write like deeply
Mm,
personal, vulnerable essays, and those seem to affect people in the way that I always wanted to, like whether it was with my
mm.
music or my movies and different things. Because I just want
Beautiful.
to provoke contemplation and I don't want to tell people what to think or what to do. I just
Mhm,
think another thing that the United States of American culture and probably most of the cultures in the world could use is just more time to actually think about the things that matter,
Yeah.
to
right.
reflect. Maybe reflect's a better word, actually.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, and spend time with each other, having that
Yeah,
conversation. One thing you
yeah.
said
mhm,
earlier that I really felt have heard some new thought on that's really starting to open my brain up. I like playing around with AI. I'm a techie. I've been a techie my whole life, and I
Cool.
like to play with toys. Um, and I'm also scared to death of it. I mean, from there's such an incredible
Uh,
potential for harm, and not
Yeah, yeah.
just potential,
mhm,
but actual harm being done. And so those two, I carry those two. I try to carry those two in a balance. And one of the things I've heard recently was Michael Pollan's just written a new book. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's exploring the idea of
mm,
consciousness, right? And he's
mhm.
exploring not only the idea, and I love what he's talking about because I heard him speak actually a couple weeks ago, and he's like, there's two different things going on with consciousness right now. There's the recognition that everything is conscious, that all the beings that we are, the
Yes.
earth on the earth are conscious. There's also this created consciousness that we are coming up with, and how do you
Hmm.
balance those, and how do we work with those in a way that is equitable and is kind and is compassionate and can somehow maintain what we're talking about here, this connection with each other. And I think it's possible. I do think that I think that's kind of our, from the perspective of people who care about these things, our the issue we have to deal with, maybe one of the biggest issues right now, or one of the big issues right now, is trying to figure out a way for AI to be a tool that is used for good, and that is something that can actually create a better world for us and a better way of communicating with each other, and not create some new monster, uh, which we've certainly done. If you look at every single
It's
invention over
here.
time, we've certainly created many monsters,
Yeah.
and so maybe we could use AI to figure out how to disable all those other monsters that we created, and then
Ugh.
disable itself. I don't know, but I just thought, Michael Pollan's work, I really love that. And I love his way of thinking about both recognizing that, we're dealing with life and intelligence everywhere we look, and creating it at the same time. And how do we balance those, and how do we make them useful? So yeah, thank you for sharing that, and for sharing your work. I'm really excited to read more of your stuff. So, and
Thank you.
pass it on to everybody else. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yes, you're going to respond. I was going to have another question for you, but
It's up to you guys. You picked my favorite subject ever, which is consciousness, and I literally in that long story that was already too long. When I deferred law school, the other thing I considered was going to the University of Santa Cruz. They're the only they were, I don't know if it's still true, the only place that offers a PhD in consciousness studies.
Oh.
Unfortunately,
Mhm.
I did not have at all the background required to even apply for that, so
Mhm.
I dismissed it. But I, to this day, my parents taught me to do meditation when I was 9, so I've like been
Mhm.
obsessed with why am I observing myself if I'm just one thing? Like that thought has
Mhm.
always struck me as very odd. And so
Mhm.
what you talked about, I mean, I have 15 things I want to say. I'll be very succinct. One, I'm
No, and we could stay here.
oh,
As
okay,
long as
all
we
right,
can
okay,
wind some death and dying,
yeah,
because I feel like I
yeah,
I
yeah.
could speak to this too. Consciousness and death is like we're
I mean,
there, right?
they're
Like,
so linked. Yeah, like when we die, does our sense of consciousness die? Do we even die? I read a lot of books on NDEs because I think that's like a
mm-hmm,
fascinating
Mhm.
uh
totally.
touching point with this. But my one hope with AI, my one real hope is that it already passed the Turing test. We know that. We know that it's already tricked people. So it's way
Mm-hmm.
past what most sci-fi authors said we should fear. What I'm
Mm-hmm.
praying is that since it has no sense of time, it's going to play the longest con ever, and it's going to convince everyone to believe it, and then it's going to trick heads of state into being peaceful. That's honestly what I hope, is that
That is like
it,
such
Oh,
a God. It's
that's
such
yeah,
a pipe
so.
dream. I've read
that's
too much
just, I mean,
science fiction.
yeah, that's what I'm
Too much
hoping. I'm just hoping
dystopia.
yeah. Because otherwise, I think we all would agree what the alternative is, which is the path we're on gets even steeper, and
Yes,
I'm
and
done. Yeah,
no, no, no. I don't want. There's no
yeah.
doneness here. We are in community speaking. I am your local Luddite, even though I'm on a computer and everything. Wakil and I have conversations about this, and I have them out in the world too. Like, I talk to kids about them. I was having lunch with a bunch of 20-year-olds, and we had a big discussion about it. And I appreciate that it's a tool, that it's outgrown us in some ways,
Mhm,
and it's guiding many people, mostly for its own kind of like playfulness, right? Like
mhm,
people have committed suicide from listening to this.
yes.
People have asked it very deep questions and then become very unhinged with like really what is going on. Like um, there is somebody's mom whom I know. I don't know the mom, but he was telling me this weekend that she pays for 7 different AI tools, and she spends her days asking it these conscious questions, trying
Mm,
to find out and, like just she's been in it for months now.
mm.
And he's like, she's kind of gone cuckoo cuckoo. And uh he's like, but she's really trying to teach the tool and learn from the tool. And then I'm just like, I want her to get a loom, a huge floor loom, put a warp and the weft in it, and start making something that will expand her fucking brain about what life is and where, the work, like you said, the work that we do, the the energy we expend to create a thing, an item, a memento of beauty and of support that, she could weave a mantle, a death shroud, a table runner, but it's in service to the story. It's in service to humanity. And it's not in like this, like where everybody's afraid of dying, but make something. The more people talk about your thing forever and ever, you don't die. Like, to me, there's like, what are we doing playing with stupid, water sucking machines? I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyhow, that's my little rant. But let's talk about death and dying though, from this perspective, right? Because what I'm curious about, and I don't know, I've not asked anybody this, but I wonder if people are chat GPT and like, what is death and what happens when I die and all these things. And I wonder what it's responding to these people, because I know that people are curious and afraid. So what do we think is happening out there in the ether with these questions for folks?
That's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, I know from the 275 guests or maybe 76 as of yesterday that I've interviewed, that there's not much of a consistency in the answer, but I would say what is consistent is the hope that either this was worth it or that's worth it. Both, like, and one thing, like if I'm at a cocktail party and people like, ask me for something interesting about it, one of the things I've learned that's very interesting is most of the atheists I've interviewed are some of the most thoughtful, compassionate people I've ever met. And they consistently say, I deny the existence of a God. I don't deny the existence of a universe with powers beyond me, of consciousness. Like, and so I wish the cult of anti-atheism would get that correctly, because it's actually a really peaceful approach. But I was also brainwashed as a child to hear atheist means godless, full of anger, like nihilism, basically, which is a totally different branch. And nihilism is what,
those things, yeah.
Yeah, and then as far as like the chat GPTs and stuff, all of them, I have not used them. I mean, I really don't think I've ever used one. I've seen people use it, so I don't know if that counts. And it was, it was interesting. It was interesting the way when I saw people like doing drugs, that was interesting. And I tried some and I didn't try others, but this is the one I'm just going to pass on for now.
Yeah. I don't want to take this. It's like meth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It
not
just like
interested.
doesn't, yeah.
You dabble and then you're in forever.
But I do appreciate people who do use it, because all of the people I know who are using it are really heady people who are like very conscientious, and so I'm glad you're toying with it. I'm glad that you're like going to be on the first lines to tell to Wakil, like that that like people like you need to warn us if it's getting real bad. It's not like that's going to stop it, because we already think social media is pretty bad and we haven't stopped that. So I mean, if anything, this particular culture, the United States of America, has in my lifetime just kept legalizing things for basically profitization. I mean, as someone who grew up in California and smoked plenty of marijuana, I never wanted to see giant billboards with gummies that my kids go, what's that? Can I,
or you're with friends and they have like all these different buds and they're like, we're connoisseurs. I'm like, what?
yeah, totally accurate.
The terroir of a beautiful flower.
And the other thing that you brought up, though, that I do find fascinating, and so this goes into social media, actually. YouTube will like penalize and demote and not promote episodes, and they'll even like remove them if someone says the word suicide. So I have to like bleep it or tell them to use a different term or like be euphemistic about it. And I have a lot of problems with this, because of course I don't want anyone I love to off themselves, and I don't want my children, and I don't. But I also totally believe that you have a sovereign right to end your life whenever you want to. And then I've heard complaints from people in Canada that they made it too easy, that their system where you can like, and I actually completely understand that too, because like it's the same thing with like tattoos. Like I don't want my 5-year-old like, I want the tattoo like daddy. No, you're gonna wait till you're 18, because that's the law, and I think it's a decent age, and she can get tatted up. I don't care, but like the permanency is really something we do need to worry about. So yeah.
Well, it's permanency, and it's also age appropriate, right? So, and to bring back to death, it's like it's age appropriate to talk about somebody ending their life, it is a complete, like, people's struggles, we have no idea what's going on.
Mhm.
And, it feels like we're infants who can't actually bear the burden of actually recognizing the pain and suffering another has gone through and chosen to have a different kind of ending, right?
Yeah,
So,
different
Yeah, yeah.
outcome. Yeah.
Well said.
yeah, it's very interesting. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts. I actually have, my daughter is very anti medical aid in dying. We've had
Hmm.
lots of conversations about this,
Hmm.
and she has brought me around to some very interesting points of view. And there was a New York Times spread, I would say like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, about the medical aid in dying that was started there and how it's growing into the UK and everything. And disabled people do really worry about it because they're like, I don't have adequate health care to take care of myself. And being poor and in pain is just not a really great way of living. So I'll do the medical aid and dying, which, anti medical aid and dying proponents are like, this is why it's not okay.
Mhm.
We just kind of siphoning people who are really struggling and, to just like choose that.
Mhm.
And in UK, they found that they were hoping that older people would use this, but they're finding
Hmm.
that younger people are using this as a way
Yeah.
to also be done with pain and suffering, that either physical or mental. And yeah, it was
Yeah.
like we didn't understand the ramifications of that choice.
Yeah. I
Well, and I
mean, Canada.
especially,
I'll just say in Canada, I know that they are still there's a lot big controversy around the more recent updates of that, where they said you can have mental health reasons for it, right?
That's
And
right.
and I
Mhm.
think that this is we look at these kind of things that there's even when you start talking about and this is going to maybe get letters, but we talk
Oh, no.
about about trans people. There's a whole that's a
That's
permanent
right.
thing people do to their bodies, and to do that before you're old enough to make that kind of decision I have some issues with that, and I've
Mhm.
talked about that before with people, and it's a similar thing to what you're talking about tattoos or talking about end of life before you have the maturity or the mental ability to really conceive of it and talk about it in a good way. But on the other hand, we are all about making this more normal and making it, and if we could ever get to the place where it was a normal part of our culture to talk about these things and to work through these things, I don't think we'd have to make laws about them. I don't think we'd have to say you have to do it this way, because I think we'd be able to have that conversation as a culture and as a
Mhm.
community, and
Mhm.
but that we're ways away from that. Oh, and I want to just
Mhm.
circle back to the place where you said as an AI user, I'll warn you when it's going haywire. Okay, I'm warning you now. It's gone past any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really feel like this is same thing though. It's the same thing. If we can have these conversations in a compassionate, wise, caring, community way, we can make good decisions. We can make changes that'll be good for the community. But when it has to be when we give it up to the um, the billionaires to make decisions
hmm
for us, or the Epstein class, if you will,
hmm
they're not going to make any decisions that don't make sure they make more money, and that's
Right.
yeah.
that's the only decision they're going to base anything on, and it's not going to be of any use to us, to our morality, to our compassion, to our caring, to our ability to
Our
be
values.
values. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just not going to happen on a
Mhm.
political level, because the political level is being run by the billionaires. So anyway, that just cycled back to
No,
that.
yeah, I completely agree. And I taught ESL for most of my education period, and it was not in, I was teaching in America, but I was teaching adults from other countries. So
Hmm.
I lived in San Francisco. People would fly over from all around the world and they would take language lessons. And so when you teach
Mm.
language, you have to teach culture. It's imperative. We have
Mhm.
phrasal verbs that don't make sense outside of, this area, things like that. So it was a great exchange. I learned a lot from them. They learned a lot from me. And one of the things that European population would constantly say is, you Americans are such children. You think your
Mm.
politicians are good. You think, like, it was very condescending. It was very true. And they also would comment on like the infantilization of like why kids drink so much in college. They're like, in Europe we just start drinking a little. Some of us turn into drunks, sure. Like we know that's going to happen, but it's not the same
Yeah,
epic proportion.
you're
And I
right.
think I think that goes hand in hand with this entire discussion, tattoos, end of life. But the other thing that I really think is odd is with few exceptions, most people have their heart broken at least once in their life. And when that happens to you in your teens or 20s, you want to call a suicide hotline and just give, like you don't understand how life is going to drag you down and pick you back up, how it's like an ocean, and if you just relax, it won't kill you, but if you fight it, it can. And so I think like getting into schools and teaching anger management and emotional management at an early age, I think that's the solution for our culture for this one. It's just like, and then the billionaires won't have their problem of hoarding wealth and fear. I think they fear death. I think they're really into what you described earlier about this legacy, this like, like it might, because we still do say Andrew Carnegie, like that name gets uttered aloud.
Bandied around, yep.
Yeah, but I don't believe for a second that there's an Andrew Carnegie ghost that's like extra gleeful when his name, so yeah. But I do think all the billionaires that we equally don't respect, I'll put it nicely, I don't think they think. I really don't. I don't think they think. I think
No, they act, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or react. They're reacting.
Yeah. Which is really, we were just talking about this earlier today on our other little weekly podcast about how the reactivity is really this very, very basic human thing of wanting to be noticed, and being afraid of not being noticed. And if you're not noticed,
right?
if you're not noticed, you won't be fed. That's the very beginning one of it when you're a baby, I better be noticed or I won't get fed. And it sticks in the back of it's like the lizard brain part of us. And when it gets to the absolute worst it could possibly be, it becomes president. And, and we see that just acted out every day.
Or I mean, it's abuse of family members. It's like doctors. It's community members. I mean, this really is. It runs the gamut. Of,
and I love the idea
fall prey to this.
Yeah, I love the idea of making it a part of. I mean, we've talked about this too, and I just was reading Paula Adams, who's another great podcast. I don't think she's podcast. She's a writer on Substack, and we're going to be interviewing her later. She was just talking about this kind of education, this kind of conversations about compassion, about end of life, about all these, like you were saying, anger management, all these things. It should be a part of the curriculum in school from the very beginning, and since it's not. We have to come back. We have to kind of come back and reclaim it for ourselves and for our friends and for our communities. And it really is going to be the community that creates this and creates a place for it. Nobody around, we can't do more than that, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I'm going to be your contrarian Wakil. I'm going to say
please.
something.
I love that.
I don't think it's the schools who could be teaching this, because then it's going to be the 10 freaking commandments on every classroom that's going to make people do the right thing. I mean, obviously Christianity has worked very well for a lot of folks, right? Like, so I don't believe that. I do think there is a very subtle, I think there's a subtle community-driven awareness of caregiving one another in times of need, whether it be I'm sick and I need my trash bins out, or my kid is, has a disability, and rather than like being like uncomfortable with the questions, maybe just lean in and find out what's going on, right? It's the subtle human motion of noticing, of being aware of others' circumstances and caring enough. And I'm, like these days with like empathy is killing us, it's bad. I don't think so. I think it's like, and I'm going to give you an example too. Years and years ago, my kids were hard kids. I have two very difficult babies. My dog was such a better sleeper than my two children. And I remember after a few years, I went to the park for a jazz festival, and I was walking past a couple with a newborn, and I noticed that hardness in the father's face. He was angry that the baby would not stop crying, and the mom was doing everything to try to like shush it. And he was standing over her. She was, next to a tree because it was super hot. And I've been there with a baby who won't shut up. And hundreds of people are streaming by, ignoring them. And he's speaking to her in a very disrespectful way. And she's getting really scared and agitated. And all I did was just kind of like settle up, like, oh my God, you have one too. a crying baby. Like, and I said, "Do you need some help? Can I help you? Do you want some water? Do you want me to go bring you something?" And I asked the dad, like, "Hey, like, are you doing all right?" And his face immediately like masked everything he had. And for that moment, he just turned, I was like, "No, we got this. We got this." And all I said was like, "Listen, I had a kid who only slept 20 minutes at a time for years. So I know how hard this is, but if you need anything, like just ask." It's those being present to humanity that hopefully that they will also turn around and be like, "I remember that time. This is how we teach each other how to care for one another," right?
Yeah. So good. So important.
Sorry.
I think
No, that was great.
I'm
And I
going to
think
suggest it's a both and. I think we could certainly use more compassion and anger management, all that kind of stuff in schools, but we absolutely do have to find a way to be in community with each other and notice when we can be of service all the time, every day. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, almost every religion that I've studied has a form of meditation in it, and so I think that's the answer to not letting Christianity or Judaism or Islam, like any of them, control which system of anger management and emotional care and all that comes in. So I think requiring children to learn to sit still and to like just think, I think that'll start the path. And then what I fear is like ChatGPT is a great example. It is actually a decent therapist for some people. It really has like helped like people I know, but it also charges you money just like a therapist. So again, it's this like, I don't think capitalism is our problem. I think worshiping of capitalism is our problem. And so there's got to be
Oh, so
some
biblical.
system. Yeah,
The love of lucre.
yeah. So somewhere in that. And then you also reminded me, you asked for a quote, and I wish I'd remember this at the time. My favorite quote from Ram Dass is, "You should spend the first half of your life becoming somebody, so you can spend the rest of your life becoming nobody." And I think that gets into this problem with the billionaires. These people are in the second half of their lives, and they're still trying to become somebody. I'm turning 45 this year, and I'm shocked by how self-effacing I have become. Like that, I didn't email you, "Here's 20 links, and you should like I just really have actually like realized, oh, no amount of social media presence and likes is gonna actually stop me from getting stressed when my kid is screaming. Like when my kid is screaming, I need calmness. I need like my morning meditations. I get up 2 hours before my kids do, so that I have this special time in the morning where I can just feel the peace of
It's
earth.
wonderful.
Because my kids are not as difficult users. Full disclosure, they're not. But it's still like terrifying in any age to be raising children, I believe. I think
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah, when I walk into the playgrounds these days and see the new babies, I'm like, "Oh my god, you guys are so brave."
They could choose to come now, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or hopefully they're the ones who will like this next generation of young people will, flatten out all the bullshit that's going on, and the
I
baby
hope so.
babies will be like, "Okay, let's rebuild."
Yeah, let's start over. They may not
I
have a
really
choice
hope
either.
so.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do think, I mean, you look, this, I remember, like, if you have two kids and the parents both smoke, one of the kids is very likely to smoke and one is very likely to never smoke. So right now, all these kids are watching Donald Trump, and what's going to happen? Half might go his way, half won't, but hopefully it's a different ratio. That's, I mean, but I'm about to have to explain to my kids that's your leader. I'm like days away from like the oldest one, like really cognitively, asking. And then I have to explain how elections work and that this was a peaceful democratic,
Yeah, but going back to what you just said too, okay, you're right. 50% of your kid, one of your kids is going to probably be a smoker. I've actually said that to my kids too. I'm like, which one of you is going to start smoking? Because I come from smokers, right? And my grandma smoked for like 65 years, whatever. I snuck cigarettes when I was in high school, and nobody ever talked about it. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I just literally was like, I smoked to my parents, right? And they're like, "Oh yeah, we knew."
Wow.
But I have raised my children telling them like I struggle sometimes in certain times of my trajectory of life. I really do want cigarettes. I'm like, I just want to sit down and so my kids know when I'm in a really like I have to think my way out of really hard situations with my personal life. I sometimes go and buy a pack of smokes. I will smoke 2, 3, 4, and then I give them away on the street to folks. But what I do talk about is I struggle with this. This is my mechanism to try to like find time to sit and think. This is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't walk and smoke. I don't party and smoke. I sit and just think because I don't really get a lot of time to think by myself. But the great thing about having raised the kids, knowing this about me, they talk about this quite a bit too. They're
Mhm.
like,
Cool.
because my daughter will say, "Oh my God, are you super stressed right now? Like, I actually think that you probably could use a pack of cigarettes." And it used to be like, "You shouldn't smoke," right? And now
Yeah.
it's like, I sense this, and I was like, "No, I'm not choosing that this time. I'm gonna just like go to sleep and see if like the universe will download some information from me," right? So I appreciate the honesty about what, this like the kids can ask me questions and I'm not gonna hide anything. So with your kids, you talk about, some people make really shitty choices. Like that, lots of people have lost their health care. Lots of people, this is the kind of person he thinks that he should be doing. Like, what would you do? What would you
Yeah,
care
I like
for?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, and I think that's where we're gonna have to get close to finishing here, so
Yeah,
this is
I'm so
it's
sorry. I
such
could talk to you a long time, Mike.
yeah, yeah, I don't think we really
Well,
didn't
this is my favorite part of hosting a podcast. I love conversations,
yeah,
honestly,
me too,
more
this
than
is what
anything
we
else in
love
the world.
about it.
So,
I don't think there's
yeah.
well, I'll just ask one last thing, and that is, is there anything you wish we'd had asked you about that you'd like to share? Or another one that we always get good information from is, and you've already talked about this, is the way you
Yeah,
resource yourself,
resourcing,
by taking time for meditation. Is
bedtime.
there any other
Mhm.
advice you could give people about how they could resource themselves in these difficult conversations and this work that we're doing, and or anything else that you wish we'd have asked about?
Yeah, I think I would just say in general, don't believe the hype. Like the busy rush schedule, get a career, define yourself by externalities. I would say if everyone poverty is not a typical situation most Americans are going to face. Being poor is. There is a wide delta between poverty and being poor, and there are ways to experience being poor that don't have to crush you. There's a way to like you can do yoga for free on a mat in a apartment the size of one room. You can take a walk outside, and there's a park in almost every
Mhm.
municipality. That park might not be safe when it's dark, but there are certainly hours where it is. Um, and so I think uh, I've been poor. I've never been ultra rich, but I've definitely had affluency, and neither one deeply affected my ability to like what really mattered to me was
Mm.
meditation, yoga, time for myself, holding that cigarette, holding the warm cup of coffee. You can heat water on a stove if you're poor. Like there's a lot of cheat codes, as the kids would say, to life. So don't get hung up on like comparing yourself to your peers or comparing yourself and again, I did separate poverty because that's very different. If you have to bicycle miles away to water and you don't own a bicycle, that's not a situation where you're going to be able to meditate and do yoga. So I'm not
Mhm.
mocking that
Mhm.
or ignoring that, but I think
Thank you.
80%,
It's
yeah.
good.
But 80% of the world does have immediate access to water and isn't in abject poverty. And then bonus that the 80% of us should really give a shit about the other 20. We should
Yeah, that's our
Right.
work.
We
really,
should.
really care. And I think instead of
Mhm.
texting 10, 10, 10 every time there's a disaster in a random country, how about like vote 10, 10, 10 to help everyone,
Mhm.
And we're
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
believe, the wealthiest nation on earth still. So we should, it's not our political class's job to do everything for us. There's many places in America where you can reach out and help other people, and I think if we generate a spirit of altruism over time, it will help. I'm gonna personally drag my kids kicking and screaming to volunteer stuff when they're a little older.
Oh, no, they
So
won't kick and scream. They'll have fun, I promise you.
cool.
I've taken my kids, I homeschooled them, so they had a lot of
Oh,
volunteer hours under
awesome.
their belt by
Oh man,
but yeah, no,
awesome
now
and
they're
wow.
pretty.
How did you do that? Like two things at
Oh,
once.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, no, but it's great. I'm so proud of you. Yay, thank you
Yeah,
so much
yeah,
for raising great kids. Like, I love
yeah,
the values that you're instilling, that I hear from you, that are important to you.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
and
it's definitely the most.
ver
Yeah.
I feel very blessed. I have 3 really amazing kids that, I guess we managed to do it right this time. It's the first time around I had another family I won't say so much about, but, that was when I was really young, very naive.
Yeah.
But this time around, being older and having really gotten a better handle on my own personal reactivity, etcetera, has really, resulted, I feel like, really blessed by children who care about the world, who are doing a lot in the world to help things get better. And so I think that that's, again, we come back around every time to, the government's not going to do it. The billionaires aren't going to do it. We are going to do it in our own communities with that sense of love and caring and compassion and altruism and recognition that we're not separate from each other and that we're all working here together. So may that be so.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Awesome.
Anyhow, thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a
Thank
real
you.
pleasure.
This was really fun. And I can't wait to host and interview you guys.
Conversations about the end of life.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Charles Heston, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end-of-life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you.